All right, today on Free Field Training, we're doing a special Christmas edition. We're going to talk about the Police Academy. And the Academy is something that comes up the most in the comments and questions on YouTube, on Instagram, on all of that. In fact, we're live streaming this on Instagram, and I'm cutting it up, putting it up on YouTube for all of you so it can be a little more compact and make more sense to all of you. And I'm going to be taking comments and questions from the audience at the end, so please stick around for that. Today's video is sponsored by Xavier Wells, who is the author of several books about becoming a cop and about the Police Academy and about field training and all of those things that interest most people who are following my channel. And today's book that we're going to be comparing and contrasting my experience with against the stuff that's presented in the book is Graduating with Honors, Mastering the Police Academy. So right on the onset when I got this book, the first thing I thought of was graduating with honors? You don't really need to graduate with honors. And that's the truth of it. And most people that are going to the Police Academy are not looking to graduate with honors. They're looking to skate. Hop in, do what they have to do, and leave, because this is a mandatory training to get a job, not something that they're looking to get a special doggle on their uniform for or a pat on the back. And the other thing about graduating with honors from the Police Academy is to many, many places, it doesn't matter. They don't care whether you graduate with honors or you just graduate, or you graduate at the bottom of their class. They're sending you to an academy to do the mandatory minimum training. And that's the huge difference between the experience of the author in his book and my experience with the area that I'm working in and the academy that I went to. See, I work for a small suburb of Chicago, and they send everybody around here other than the state police, the feds, and Chicago PD proper, send their people to one of the regional academies. So the one I went to is the Police Training Institute at the University of Illinois, and it was a stay-away academy, which means I went there and I stayed. And the hours were not like 9 to 5, 6 to 3, any of that. It was, you're showing up and you'll be home maybe at the end of the week if you live close enough to drive there. But you're staying and you're sleeping there and you don't get the option of going home every night. And that's a huge difference between my experiences and his experiences, which we'll get into a little bit in the book. So the author of the book went to an academy that it sounds like was run by the agency that he worked for. And that's hugely different than my experience. And he was trying to graduate with honors. He had a lot of previous military experience and experience in the working world, and he was trying to make a name for himself at the Police Academy. Where I'm at, making a name for yourself at the Police Academy doesn't really mean anything when you get out, because you're making a name with people that you're probably never going to see again. I've never once seen my academy instructors other than when I went down to the academy to see someone else graduate. So it didn't really matter much to them. But if you're working for a police department, or you're going to be working for a police department, you're going to a police department's academy that department runs, that could be huge for you. So we're going to the book. There are some things that I love and are really good. There are some things that are funny and relatable. There are some things that I would add that I think the author left out. And unfortunately, there's only so much you can put into any book. And then there's things that I just wholly disagree with. So we're going to start off with some things that were funny and relatable in the book. I read the whole thing through in the past week, and a couple of them kind of stuck out. I kind of have a kinship with the author a little bit on some of these issues. When he talks about information systems, he's trying to get people, before they go to the Police Academy, to understand that the stuff that you're going to use, it's not going to be like in the private sector. You're going to be using public sector equipment. And he says, policing is stepping into the modern era all across the nation. Departments are adopting new systems and technology to help officers do their jobs better. Usually the technology is more of a headache than it's worth, but some hotshot salesman has sold the department brass on the idea, so now you have it. And that has 100% been my experience with every piece of technology that we get from the Police Academy all the way through until you're working on investigations, as a detective or on the SWAT team or whatever you end up with. The technology that you get ends up being stuff that would never fly in the private sector. In the private sector, the report writing programs, the programs to keep information, to store data that you're going to need later on, most of them are complete trash that you would never, ever, ever get away with in the private sector. If you went to British Petroleum and tried to sell them the systems that we use to write reports, to do some sort of in-house report writing system to maintain a facility, they would laugh, and there's no way they would ever buy it. And then he goes on, he says, besides the tech, most patrol cars have isn't even close to being on par with the civilian capabilities. Yeah, so you're going to get in a car or even at the police academy, you're going to get stuff that's just, it's junk. If you try to sell it to somebody, they might buy the laptops that you put in a car for 50, 60 bucks. Some people will buy them if you have tough books because they see that it's a tough book. It's like, oh, a tough book, that's so cool. But in reality, you get it and half the stuff doesn't work on them half the time. They break really fast. Even if they say they're made for that environment, they don't last the way you would expect a computer to last in the public sector. And also, when you get a new car, that doesn't mean you get all new equipment. So you get a brand new car and then you get like an old computer. You go into the station to use the computer. At the academy, you go into the working room that you have to study and use a computer. And the computers they're going to have available with the programs that they're going to have available are going to be like 10 years old. And that's almost everywhere I've ever went. So it's funny that the author here had the exact same experience with technology that I did coming into the academy. And the other one was when he talked about traffic. Now, this guy is huge into martial arts and shooting, and it has all these ideas about leadership, but then he says traffic laws. He says, my lowest scoring test at the academy was transportation code, traffic law. That sounds just like me with trying to learn the Illinois vehicle code. And now I can recite off a bunch of it that I use all the time, but man, having to learn traffic law, having to learn something that you're not super interested in is the hardest part of the police academy. And I think that's the one big takeaway from this book, is that even if you're not interested in it, in order to pass, in order to meet those minimum standards, you have to study it. And he goes over that over and over in here, explaining interesting ways to study, ways to increase your retention when you're studying, so that way you can pass through the academy. Things like creating study groups and trying to get with other people who are qualified experts in the field that you have, that you're trying to get studied up for. And there are going to be those people. You're going to have somebody in your academy class that is an expert marksman. You're probably going to have someone in your academy class that runs 10, 15 miles every day. You're going to have somebody at your academy class that is very, very good academically. You might have somebody who's an attorney in your academy class who's doing this class because of some sort of state regulation that requires them to do it in order to do an exterior investigation. There's lots of stuff. There's lots of people that are going to be experts in areas that you're just first learning about at the police academy, and you need to get with those people. If you have somebody in your academy class and you don't know anything about traffic law, and that dude was a state trooper in another state, you go make friends with him and you be in his study group, because he's going to understand the workings of the traffic laws that you're going to have to know for your exit test or your final exam or whatever they're calling it in your state. Beyond that, there's a lot of other really good stuff in here. So he goes into a discussion about graduating with honors. And he says honors, in case you haven't ever been, which if you're watching this you probably haven't been to a police academy, you get the option, not the option, in case you've never been in a police academy. So the author goes into with this graduating with honors and what that means. Graduating with honors at a police academy doesn't just mean graduating at the top of your class academically. There's going to be separate subsections of awards that you can get. You're going to have normally the top shot person, the top most improved PE, the best PE, so the physical education people, and you're going to have an academic top scorer or maybe a couple of academic top scorers in your class. But what I'll add to that, and he goes over what that means for you, is that you have to be doing it for you. Where I'm at, if you're doing it just because, hey, I want to be able to tell people I was the top shot at my academy class. Not that you have to do that. And there's some reasons you may not want to do that, and we'll get into that at the end with the things that I disagree with in the book. There's a lot of really good advice in here. One of the best pieces of advice in this book and throughout a law enforcement career when you're done with the academy and you're done with field training is always to proofread your reports. He makes a big deal about it with tips in report writing. Most of the reports that get rejected back to people are rejected back for spelling errors or missed punctuation or uppercase, lowercase, or not doing it in all uppercase or not doing it in uppercase, lowercase, or weird errors in grammar, things like that. It's not things that you did wrong and then we're documenting, or you documented wrong. The reason reports get kicked back is because people aren't reading them before they send them in. And I'm just as guilty of this sometimes as anybody. I'll write my report and it'll just be a simple criminal damage. Like, I, Officer Tommy, blah, 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 I responded to da-da-da-da, I observed yada, 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 and I'll send it off. And the computer will have auto-corrected something to something that makes absolutely no sense. Or I'll say it auto-corrected it, but I really spelled it wrong. And that's when you get most reports are sent back. So the easiest way to improve the quality of reports is to proofread your report. So go back when you do a report and reread what you wrote. It's just that simple. That is a really good piece of advice that you don't hear from a lot of people until they get out of the academy and they get to field training. So keep that in mind, especially if you've never been to college before and you've never had to do a paper. Write your report, then proofread it. That's huge. Giving advice up on firearms instructing in a book is always really difficult, but here's some great advice that I always give on my channel too. It says if you're trying to get top shot in your academy class, dry fire practice. Go on weekends and practice. Here's the problem that you have sometimes with this, is you have people that they're having trouble qualifying and they can't dry fire practice. Or they want to be the top shot at the academy, but they can't dry fire practice because, like the police academy I went to, made me bring my duty pistol in and then lock it away at their range. So I had to bring my pistol, lock it away at their range, and I could only pull it out at the range to shoot, to practice, to qualify. And I couldn't go there and practice extra on my weekends, and my pistol was at their range. So one idea, if you're not at a stay away academy, if you know that's coming and you've never handled a firearm before, or if you're trying to be that top shot person, is to have two guns or to borrow a gun that's substantially similar to the gun that you have to dry fire practice at home with, or dry fire practice in your dorm with if they allow that. Or if you're trying to get that top shot, do the same thing. Dry fire, dry fire, dry fire. You dry fire practice 10 rounds a day at the beginning of every shift as a cop, you will have so much easier time qualifying later on. And that type of thing starts at the academy. There's lots of good stuff about that type of thing in this book, stuff that I talk to people about all the time on the channel. Speaking of stuff that I talk to people all the time about on my channel, there's a section in here, and I'll show it to you here. It's 1/2 of one page on communication. And unfortunately, there isn't a lot in an academy structure that they can teach you about effective police communications on the street. What they're going to do is they're going to give you kind of some scripts. They're going to give you the little pointer stuff like, all right, go in there, make sure you get their name, write it down, make sure you get their phone number, write that down so that way you can get any information that you forgot to get, and then get the who, what, when, where, and why, and yada, yada, yada. And they're going to give you kind of a direction to go in with talking to people. Academies are getting really good at setting you up in scenarios to let you try some things. But a lot of the communication stuff, a lot of the higher level communication stuff, the stuff that's going to keep you safe in your ability to speak with people and to talk down problems and to solve problems, how to take that criminal matter and turn it into a civil matter, yeah, the guys who've been on the job a while know what I'm talking about. You're going to learn that in field training, and then after field training, you're going to learn from other cops who have been there and done that. And if you're smart, when you're done with the academy and you're done with FTO, you're going to latch on to somebody on your shift that's been there and done that and does police work in the way you'd like to learn how to do it, and you're going to start hanging out with them so that way you can learn the tips and tricks too. Another really great tip that the author brings up in here is, he doesn't put it this way, there's a whole big section on it, but I'll break it down for you. You want to volunteer and not be voluntold. Very simply, people who volunteer all the time, so if you're constantly engaging the instructor in class, you're constantly engaging every time they ask, hey, does anybody know yada yada, your hands up in the air and you're engaging with the instructor, you're less likely to get randomly picked out of the class when it's time for them to randomly pick people out of the class when it's something that you don't know. So a little life hack with taking any class, engage with the instructor, and then they're less likely to call on you when you're going to end up looking like a fool, which helps with leadership, which is something that the author gets into quite heavily in this. His advice in the book, and here's something where him and I separate quite a bit out, is to get into a leadership position in your academy class and to show leadership. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the ways that people show leadership, and some of the advice that's in the book doesn't actually portray leadership to people who are going to be at a police academy. And this is kind of a problem with people not understanding the audience. Sure, there's people that are going to be quiet at the academy, but because a person is quiet doesn't mean that they don't have experience in other areas. Because someone doesn't have the classical military bearing leadership doesn't mean that they're not going to be totally put off by the way that you show leadership coming at it from a military background. And that's something that I'll caution you about. The author in here suggests on the first day when the instructors are done speaking to make an announcement, stand up and make an announcement that everybody should meet you out in the hall so you can exchange names, phone numbers, email addresses, and Facebook profiles. And that way you can all communicate and you can set up study groups. I think that a lot of people would kind of see through that, including your academy instructors are probably going to think like, oh yeah, this is the guy that wants to make a name for himself. Okay, we'll let him have his moment. And you're going to get people at your class. If you're in a small academy class, maybe 15, 20 people, to be like, oh good, that guy is going to be the one that talks all the time. But that's what we're going to be thinking in your head. And then in a larger academy class, you're going to have people that you're going to say that and they're just going to walk out. And they're going to want nothing to do with you the rest of the time. There's a lot of people who have had leadership experience in the private sector who are going to look at that and be like, who's this clown? And they're going to leave. And so you're going to be fighting an uphill battle with dealing with those people on anything else in the future. Another thing in the leadership realm that I'll caution you on is the author actually says in here, let me pull it up so I don't misquote him. During your many PT vacations, finish among the front of the pack every time and then go back to encourage and work out with the stragglers. There's a right way and there's a wrong way to do this. And everyone that I've ever seen do it does it 1,000% the wrong way. So, if you're in really good shape, right? And if we're going to the academy, we should be in the best shape of our lives, right? This sweater actually fit me when I was at the police academy. You should be in the best shape of your life. If you run to the front on, a 5-mile run, you get done, and then there's people that are a mile back because you ran so much faster than them. Good leadership is going back to the back of the pack with water. And when you see someone who has drank all their water because they're 40 pounds overweight or they're 35 years old trying to do this stuff, and you bring them water, like, hey man, hey, do you need some water? And you hand them water, the people at the back of the pack that are struggling, especially day one, that is leadership. If you go back there and scream like, yeah man, come on, let's go, let's go, let's go, that is obnoxious. And I'll tell you, people that have had leadership positions in other organizations are going to stop talking to you and they're going to be pissed. And you might even instigate a fight. So don't do that. If you're going to try to lead people by going back and helping people who are not as good as an activity as somebody else, you need to go back there and help them. That's how you lead at the police academy, is you go back and you help the people that aren't doing as well. If you want to graduate with a little pin that says that you're the top shot, or you want to graduate with a certificate or a letter in your file that says you were the best academically at your academy class, or you want to graduate and you want to have the medal around your neck that says that you were the #1 fighter, there are several things that you need. One is you have to put the work into doing it. You want to graduate with honors from the police academy. You want people to be announcing your name at graduation. You need to put a lot of work into doing that. And the second thing you need is to already have that skill set most of the time. Make no mistake, unless you're already a crack shot, you are probably not going to get the top shot award. Unless you are already highly educated and you have academic achievements, you had a 4.0 in college, you are probably not going to get the top academic award. If you don't already study a martial art, you are probably not going to get the top martial art award. But here's the thing. If you aim that direction when you're coming into the academy and when you're first starting off at it and you get into those good habits moving on, even if you don't take that honors award, you're still going to be at the top of the pack. You're still going to make a good name for yourself, and you're still going to be in a really good position coming into your career. The last thing you need to get one of those awards is luck, because you need someone who's better at it to not have already been assigned to that same academy class. And let's be honest, no matter how good we are at anything, there's always somebody out there that's going to be just a little bit better than us. So if you come into the academy and you're a competition shooter, don't be surprised if there's somebody else there who is also a competition shooter and is a little bit better than you. Or you run 3 miles a day and there's somebody there that runs 10 miles a day. There's going to be those people in every class. So come into it with the proper attitude, and I think this book and a lot of its suggestions are a good start for going in with the proper attitude and having those skill sets already built up and ready and in place to graduate the police academy with honors. But you have to understand that if you don't, that's not a failure. That's just life. It is possible to do everything right and to still not succeed. That's just the way life works sometimes. So sometimes you're not going to get lucky. You're going to be that guy that, you know, I'm a really good shot, and then some guy that's an IDPA competitor and has been for 10 years and he's a sponsored shooter is in your academy class, and you're out of luck. And that's just the way it works. There are some things in this, now there are also some things in this book that I'd add things to. I don't think the author spent enough time, put enough emphasis on them. So for instance, when talking about use of force, the author says, number one rule, if you pull a tool from your duty belt, taser, OC, spray, ASP, make sure you are willing to use it and not just trying to intimidate. Know that you have the legal authority to apply the force you're about to apply. This is important when doing scenarios at the academy. They're going to put you into a situation and they're going to see what your reaction is. I'm going to tell you something. The role players in those situations, they normally role play for a long period of time. They've seen a lot of stuff. So if you don't have the legal authority to use the tool you're using, they're going to check you on that. They're going to be like, what? What, you going to shoot me? You going to shoot me because I spit at you? Is that what you're going to do? And you're going to end up getting points deducted. So that doesn't help you out. This is also a good thing to remember throughout your career. Way too many times I hear people talk about, man, you just pull your taser out and point it at them and they're just going to cower in fear. Yeah, if they don't know what they're doing. But you get hardened criminals who are like, nah, man, I know you ain't going to tase me because this isn't a situation where you could tase me, and they're just going to run away and you're going to be like, oh, well, I can't do anything. Or you are going to tase them in a situation you shouldn't tase them, you're going to end up getting fired. You have to know those use of force rules, and that's something I'm really glad that he goes into in a lot more depth in the book. There's a whole chapter on doing the use of force stuff in here. I think you guys would really like this book. There's a lot of really good advice, and I am now going to go to the questions from the Instagram live stream, see what everybody has to say in the comments, and we'll see if we have anything cool and pertinent. The police academy is always a huge topic on my channel anytime I do any type of live stream, so I'm hoping that we get some good comments and questions here. Silverback Gorilla 85 says, how long is training where you're at? It was 12 weeks. I think it normally it was 12 weeks, but the academy was 14. So in case you got hurt, you had extra time to get the mandatory hours in. But training isn't just the police academy. Hey, thanks for watching Free Field Training on YouTube. While you're here, check out one of our other videos, or head on over to the Patreon and see how you can get your name put on your videos like these fine folks over here. All the links are in the description, of course. We'll see you guys next time.